Okay, I think we are live. So today's discussion with English Connects is about the UN Sustainable Development Goals and what they mean for education in Bangladesh. I am joined by two educators, two professionals in the field of education, Tawfiq Hassan from the British Council and Safia Gassi from Sunshine Schools. If you are watching, please say hello to us in the chat so we know you are there. And let me begin by asking Tawfiq to introduce himself.
Thanks, Wendy. It's really a pleasure, actually, to be with you and Safia in this really important conversation. So, of course, my name is Tawfiq Hassan. I work for the British Council as Head of Education. I'm actually, as you said, I can claim myself an education professional. I've been working in this sector for the last 9-10 years. I started my career actually in BRAC. I mean, of course, BRAC is very reputed for its huge large-scale education program. And then in 2013, I joined in the British Council. I was mostly looking for, responsible for our non-formal work, our gender empowerment work, and also our social enterprise work in my previous role. But more recently, I have taken over our overall education portfolio. So I'm now currently responsible for our schools work, our higher education work, and also our work in the youth development, all sort of non-formal education. So really, I think it's an absolute pleasure for me to being here today and to join you and Safia in this conversation. Thank you.
Well, it's great to have you with us. And it's really interesting that you have such a varied portfolio, so many different types of work, such a varied portfolio of work that I think connects closely with the Sustainable Development Goals too. And that you previously worked for BRAC as well, which is a world-renowned organization, but started out in Bangladesh. Hi there, thanks for joining us. Great to have you with us. So now I'm going to pass to Safia. Please let us know, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Well, I am Safia Ghazi Rahman. I'm an educationalist. And, I run a couple of schools, colleges, and the brand name is Sunshine Education. And we offer British education as well as our local education. And we also the trustee member of two universities, IUB Dhaka and CIU Chittagong. And also I'm very closely linked with our own institution called YSI Bangla, which is in Dhaka. Other than that, I'm linked with many other organizations, but Sunshine Charities is one of them, where people not always calling me and speaking to me every now and then whenever they need me, and I'm available 24/7. This is the main focusing points, but I belong to the society and the people of the world, not just Bangladesh. So my objective is to serve God's creation, be it human, animals, or trees. Thank you very much.
And I think, Safia, that's a wonderful introduction and a great way to bring us to talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. So, just before we get started and launch into the discussion, you probably know that the Sustainable Development Goals were developed in 2015, and they provide an agenda for sustainable development for 2030. Now, as Safia mentioned, she is involved in education, but she is here to serve the environment, humanity, and life as a whole. And I think this is one of the things that the Sustainable Development Goals do well. They talk about sustainability and development in the context of a holistic, a complete, a whole view, rather than looking at specific areas. Now, there are 17 different areas that the goals represent. And I just wonder, how many can you name? So if you are watching, put your ideas in the chat. And I'm going to pass over to, well, I don't have the answers off the top of my head, but how many can you name, guys? How many do we know? Sustainable Development Goals. What do you think is covered? Tafiq. Oh, I can't hear your sound, Tafiq.
Sorry, was on mute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, of course, in the Sustainable Development Goals, we have like 17 broad goals. And I mean, of course, all of the goals are now then broken down to different targets and indicators. But I mean,
can you name any broad areas? I mean, goal 4 for sure.
Of course, yes, that's quality education, and that's one of the most important ones, actually. Also I'd like to mention about the goal 5, which is about gender equality. I'd like to refer about goal 8, which is about like decent work and economic growth, and again, hugely important for young people for their economic like empowerment and labor, etc. I'd like to mention about goal 13. Just now, COP27 is happening, so a very important agenda, not only for Bangladesh, but for globally, climate change, climate action. And also, goal 16 is about like justice, peace, and like strong institution, good governance. And I think where we can also provide a lot of contribution from the British Council is goal 17, which is all about global partnerships for all the goals. Yeah, I mean, of course, I couldn't cover all 17, but the key things.
No, you did well. You did well. I was just testing your knowledge. I was being a little bit mean there, seeing if you could come up with the broad areas. So the Sustainable Development Goals, as Tafiq explained, are 17 areas which contribute to development in a sustainable way. Now, as Tafiq pointed out, number 4, quality education, is extremely relevant to us in the British Council and in Bangladesh as educators. So this goal, quality education, is stated that it is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. This is then broken down into 7 targets. So the goal is one idea, and then there are 7 steps that need to be achieved that would lead to quality education. So I have just pulled out a couple of those steps. So the first one is 4.1, and this is by 2030. The target is to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education, leading to relevant and effective learning outcomes. Now, when we look at this goal, I think you can see the steps that the Bangladeshi government and Bangladeshi educators are taking in order to achieve this. For example, the introduction of course books in English for today. You also in Bangladesh experienced a huge growth in students enrolling in your schools during the period from 2015 up to the today. Now, one of the challenges, of course, has been COVID, which makes this particularly tricky to manage, but also the way that we can check that we are reaching quality education by offering free and equitable education is that we check what is the proportion of young people and children in primary school, how many are ending primary school, how many are ending secondary school, and how is that achievement reflected in reading and mathematics, and how is that affected by sex or by gender. So these numbers mean that we are holding people to account. We have got this overarching goal to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning for all. But then we are breaking this down into the steps we need to take. And you can see those targets will enable us to have conversations with people around how government money is being spent, or also help us direct our work. Another target under the heading of quality education is that by 2030, there should be a substantial increase in the supply of quality teachers. And this is something that was a challenge in increasing the numbers of students. You also need to increase the number of teachers to actually teach them in schools. And I'm sure we will talk about this later. So once we look at that goal, we can then look to the indicator. How do we check that we are achieving this? And the way is to look at the proportion of teachers that are minimally qualified by education level. So how many teachers are completing the cert in ed and the dip in ed? Now, I'm going to take my slides away and I'm going to invite Tafik to explain how the Sustainable Development Goals interact with your work in the British Council in the education programs that you're involved in.
Thanks, Wendy. And you did a really great introduction of the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, of course, this is a very powerful framework where most of the countries of the world has signed up, and it's a big global commitment. And it's really an very effective mechanism that really drives the governments, the actors, to kind of shape up their vision and work and how it'd like to contribute to kind of ensure quality education for our country. Just before jumping to how Sustainable Development Goal kind of support our work in the British Council, I'd like to remind our audience about something about the British Council, what we do, or what is our overall vision, because often that is not kind of covered or communicated with our with the audience. I mean, as an organization, we have a very broad level vision, and we say it that British Council as an organization, we vision for a more peaceful and prosperous world. And the Sustainable Development Goal very wonderfully links with our vision, because if you would like to have a peaceful and prosperous world, then all these 17 goals are really important that we achieve that by 2030, because that's also probably the vision of Sustainable Development Goal is very much aligned, or our vision is very much aligned to Sustainable Development Goals, the overall ambition for that. I mean, in the British Council, of course, we have 3 pillars, if we say, through which we deliver our work. And those broad pillars are arts and culture, education, which we'll be more talking about today, and English teaching and assessment. And our work, as I said, very much driven by the global ambitions and targets set out by the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, of course, when you spoke about some of the previous kind of success that we achieved, probably during the Millennium Development Goals era, one of the big concerns was about like the numbers of like students in the classroom, and we really worked really hard as a country to kind of increase the students' enrollment, particularly in the primary, because that's the foundation of education. And we did really well. I think we ended up, and you probably mentioned about the percentage, 98% enrollment, which is a great success for a country like Bangladesh. And also achieving gender parity. So the percentage of girls, like the girls and the boys in the primary education, probably now very like almost equal in the primary. But now, if we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, some of the targets, and I think the major shift is from kind of the quantity to quality. And I mean, that's also been reflected in some of the like major kind of government reform projects in the education sector. So if we look at the primary education development project 4, the whole component 1 speaks about quality education. And when they speak about quality education, it's about like a new curriculum. You spoke about the textbook. So it's a curriculum, it's the new assessment, it's about teacher education. You mentioned about certificate in education, diploma in education. So all the in-service training for teacher, the continuous professional development for teachers. So what framework are there? So all sort of like quality aspects of the education is very much reflected in the PEDP, Primary Education Development Project 4. Very similarly, the secondary education reform project, that's also a major focus in that project, or the government ambition is to bring quality even at the secondary level. And also, even beyond the tertiary, the upcoming, the higher education reform project, that also has a huge ambition about increasing the quality of the education. And as an organization, I mean, the way we interact or contribute with, I mean, in some of these government big reform projects, we either provide technical assistance to government or work as an implementing agency to kind of achieve their ambition. So, I mean, my point is about the Sustainable Development Goal. It's hugely shaped some of the big ambition as a country from a government point of view through these reform projects. And we are here to support government through all our education work, very much linked to kind of those like big reform projects, but making sure that we through our work, through our expertise, we contribute to bring more quality in all sectors of education, in primary, secondary, and tertiary. So that's how I see like how strongly the kind of Sustainable Development Goal shapes our direction of our work in the British Council, which is very much in line with the government's ambition.
Okay. Safia, how does it interact with your work? What are your feelings about working within sustainable development and the Sustainable Development Goals? Safia, you're on mute.
Okay. Hi, once again. As we know that we have a huge population and a big chunk are young people, and they all, after the COVID period, we can see a massive change in human mind, not only in the kids, but also in the minds of the teachers and each one of us, probably spread all over the world. So keeping all that in mind, and we having a huge population, I know that we cannot, the government alone cannot possibly handle all students of Bangladesh to be educated. We from the private sector, like Sunshine Education or Sunshine Charities, we make sure that we do come forward and help these children go to school. Now we are having, winter is approaching, and there are schools which I have visited in our villages, remote villages, where the students come barefoot and hardly a t-shirt or something. So what do they do first? Clothe themselves and then come to school. Wear a pair of slippers or shoes before they come to school. It's not just coming to school and educating, getting educated. There are other factors which have to be met with by all of us. I, as an educator, I serve remote villages. I try to serve people within our community in the town area, in the city area, where the people, there are slums. We try to help them with education and medical facilities, even clothing and things like that. But we also offer, Sunshine also offers national curriculum education in Bengali and English medium, which is very low costing in comparison to other British boards. So that's another avenue. And some we offer free of cost. And we have even picked up children from the streets when they were begging and brought them over, and they call me Ammu. Ammu means mom. And some of them are in Chittagong University. They've gone to Chittagong University. That means it's not a private university.
And
it's
so
a government university. It's very tough to get in.
But I think
Sorry?
you are making an interesting point that in achieving sustainable development goals, you're not just looking to governments and institutional organizations, but local entrepreneurs are looking for opportunities to serve people, to offer education, and try to reach more students and more people to engage them in education, because, like you say, you have such a big population. I think you also raised an interesting point about that students need to have their well-being met as well as their educational needs. So the point you make about students needing to have shoes, students needing to feel nourished and secure is incredibly important when it comes to our classroom. And the Sustainable Development Goals, I think, are very powerful in that it links ideas like zero poverty, which is the first Sustainable Development Goal, the second, zero hunger, and the third, good health and well-being. Those are the cornerstones for people to flourish, to feel well, in order to engage later with education. And as educators, we have to support students in overcoming those problems in order to get them into our classrooms. So thank you for your contributions there. Interesting points. When it comes to limitations of things like the Sustainable Development Goals, do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Well, there are limitations. Then there is what I do is, whenever I get into limitations, I just call up people who are close to me. It could be my family members, my students who are settled, established, and friends that, look, I'm doing up this project. Sunshine Charities is well known in Bangladesh or in Chittagong very much. We serve people all over Bangladesh. So people do come up whenever I need. Like, we just set up the leukemia ward in the Chittagong Medical College Hospital, which had only 600 square feet. Now we have 6,000 square feet, and with 10, 20 ton AC and all equipments, blood testing machines, our labs and everything, which could be compared to any developed country. So where do we get the fund from? It is from the local public that I am not shy to mention that. I do tell them that, look, I need 10 lakhs taka. I ask my ex-students who are very well settled, big, huge business industries. So they said, madam, I give you 5 lakhs taka. So I said, okay, now I'm running out of, say, 3 lakhs taka. Okay, madam, I send the 3 lakh taka, or I send you 1 lakh taka. So I manage, I earn money, I tell people that, well, I will never retire, and I need money, so I need to earn money. And I go on earning money to sustain. And I don't want to say no to anybody. And I'm very lucky to say I've never said no to anybody.
That's wonderful.
So that is it.
an incredible story as well, that you raise so much for people in the community. And I think that's a really, the real situation is it takes people to meet these goals. Tafiq, do you have anything to add on that matter?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals needs to be achieved within 15 years from 2016 within 2030. And the last 2 years probably was most challenging couple of years in the recent history of humankind with the global pandemic. And we saw probably that massive closures of schools across the globe will have a huge impact on education, particularly in a country like less developed countries where the reality of people lives is really difficult. So, I mean, within these 2 years, people's economic situation has gone worse. So again, for their children to come back to schools now when the situation is much more improved from a pandemic point of view, but then economic condition is really challenging. And all the learning gaps that took place within these 2 years, how to fill those gaps, because these are really important factors to achieve SDG 4. So I think, I mean, all the governments, not only Bangladesh, but all, I mean, it's a global kind of challenge for SDG 4. I mean, how the impact of like pandemic and how we are actually taking measures to fill that gap so that we still can achieve some of those targets by end of 2030. But probably, I mean, that's, I wanted to add with what Safiapa has said. There has been some unprecedented challenges during this period of time.
Yeah, and when you set out those goals, it's hard to forecast for something so unexpected.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real shame and a real setback. But at the same time, the value of having this commitment to sustainable development, the value of having clear areas of life that contribute to development, and having ways to measure how you are achieving that means that you don't lose the direction now that the pandemic is, I don't want to say over, but
Yeah, but
less
probably we're end
intense,
of the tunnel.
less
Yeah.
intense than before.
Yeah.
So one of the recent events that the British Council arranged for International Teachers' Day was a talk on how we can use sustainable development goals in our classrooms, how we can talk to students, or how we use them in our training rooms. So, Sophia, I wonder, in your school, in the Sunshine Charity, do sustainable development goals play a role, explicitly or implicitly?
Yeah, it does. Honestly, even our students who are senior students, like A-level students, once they join A-level, we give them they have to do some community work where they teach. So when these children are teaching, that big students are teaching the little ones who are coming from the slums, they are getting the flavor of British education. So they are getting a really good environment, definitely, because these children are going to teach, and we try to make it as good within our means, and they are learning to speak, behave, and the knowledge that is passed on during this digital world is very interesting. Like, they are even grasping things like that, though they cannot afford to have one. But we have those, I don't know, those little tablets. I don't know what's it called. We call them. Or those little tablets here. I get them from the UK, and we get them because we have Wi-Fi in the school. So even others can use it. So we use the Wi-Fi, and they get those little things, and they play with it, and they can browse, and like if they want to see the stars or they want to see a black hole, which the senior students are talking about, because they're up to date with the atmosphere and the whole position of the nation, of the country, of the world. So these little children are getting the benefits of it. So these are, I would say, they're quite advanced, though they did not have the gadgets to take home, or even on their own, the parents cannot afford. But then they get a flavor, at least they touch it and they play with it and they know how to use it. That's something fantastic. When I go at times and I see, oh my God, they know better than me to get into any website or anything like that. So I feel they're very smart, and that
Yeah.
is an achievement, I would say. But the teachers training, how are how trained are the teachers? As I said, I get stuck at times. My little ones who do not, just hold the tablets in their hand and just watch a few things, they are faster than me. But the thing is our teachers should be well trained in IT, and they must have teachers training. Unfortunately, the population is so big, and maybe in some schools there are 70 students with one teacher, or even more than that. So, I want to be at least not, I don't want more than 70, but anyway, one teacher handling 70 students without a microphone, it is difficult.
It's
So
very
I wish we
difficult.
could help them in those ways and gear up the teacher. Government gives stipends, I mean, some sort of fees to the teachers in certain schools. Not all schools are enrolled with the government. But then again, the salary of the teacher, they have to sustain. They also go for private tuitions in the afternoon. They have to do something for a living. And then they ought to be trained better to ask for better salaries. So we have to look into the pocket of the teachers, the pockets of the students, the parents, their food, their energy level, their health issues, their clothing. They're coming up and down during the rains because they walk to school. They walk to colleges, if we talk about HSC or A levels. So thinking all that, there's a lot of contribution left. I'm glad, we are proud to say that there are people who are, I mean, the government, British Council, simple people like us, we're all coming forward, but I think more should be done. And there
So
are people
I
who
think
do it.
Smafi would agree with you about the lack of proper training for newcomers, especially for non-MPO institute. But I'm going to pass now over to Tafiq to find out how do the Sustainable Development Goals impact the work that you do? You mentioned you were involved in working with the government around teacher training, right?
Yeah. So I mean, as I was saying in my initial response, that the quality education is a now major focus, and all the big reform projects across different sectors of education, the quality is kind of the buzzing word. And one aspect of the quality education is, of course, at the very top level, is set out the kind of strategic frameworks for quality assurance framework, teachers' professional development framework, the whole teacher education thing. So I think, I mean, we are quite, closely working with government in those sorts of initiatives. So I can mention about one example, which is under the PDP4. We are working with government, working closely with the Directorate of Primary Education and Ministry of Primary and Mass Education. We have a project called TMT, which is training master trainers in English. And through this project, we are working to create a pool of certified master trainers through a cycle of trainings from their existing system, focusing on making a generation of master trainers who will be proficient in English. I mean, through this project, we are working in the Primary Training Institute, PTIs, and through the 15 PTIs, we have ambition to train 2,000 master trainers, particularly to support their kind of to support in English. So they will become master trainers in English and will cascade to other teachers in the system. So this is one. Yeah.
You mentioned you are working in 15 PTIs. So just coming back to what Smafi has commented here, that can you talk about how your work connects with local areas. If you're working in 15 PTIs, I assume that you are hitting some remote areas too.
Yeah, so it's not only Dhaka. So some of the PTs are quite outside of Dhaka. And that's one of the work through which we are going beyond the metropolitan area, but working in the district areas and working in the institution that are based in different locations. I mean, also, I mean, through this work, it's not only just creating pool of trainers, but there is an angle of institutional partnerships with PTIs, because through these trainings, of course, we expect that the institution will get some benefit through this project, which they can sustain and implement even beyond the project tenure. So there is a sustainability angle of it too.
Yeah. Well, I can see that we are running out of time. So final comments from today's session. What do UN Sustainable Development Goals mean for education in Bangladesh? Your final words, Tafiq.
I think I'd say this is a big commitment. I mean, it's really difficult to say in a word, but I think, I mean, in a phrase, a sentence, I think this is a big commitment. And I'd like to echo what Safia said in the beginning, that it's not possible to achieve only through government initiatives, but all the actors who work in the education field need to combine and join forces for Bangladesh to achieve the sustainable development goals, particularly in education. So I would say it's a commitment that government has signed up, but it's a responsibility of all to achieve those and to support government in this initiative.
That's a really powerful message to put across. I don't know if you can add to that, Safia. I don't think I can. I think that really encapsulates this idea that the Sustainable Development Goals are something that we are all working towards, and it gives us that shared purpose and understanding. Well, I would like to say thank you very much to you both for joining me today.
Thank
It
you.
was really a pleasure for us too.
And thank you to everybody in the audience that tuned in. We will be back on the 29th of November with a different kind of English Connects. We are going to have a webinar, which is an online meeting. So look out for that. We'll be talking about assessments, and we can all join together in a larger dialogue to discuss what that means in your schools and in your field of education. Thank you very much again for joining in. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.